Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow delegates. So the subtopic that the South African delegation was given for this summit was a new generation of leadership, political succession around the globe. Now, the importance of this topic is paramount. Over the last 2 years, we have seen a number of new faces into the global political playing field. Additionally, our research into this topic has been eye-opening, seeing how political succession can affect countries on both a socio-economic as well as on a political level. However, before we continue, we think that it's best that we clarify what political succession is. So, political succession refers to the transfer of leadership by one ruler brought about by either the death, resignation, or removal of another. Now, there's great significance in this political succession as it marks a potential turning point in the country's history. The new leader has a choice to make: either continue under the status quo or strike for new land in uncharted waters. In other words, usher into a new style of politics, which could end up having a global impact. So it's clear that this transition can create a period of global vulnerability, which reinforces the necessity for these new leaders to legitimize their power. Our world is constantly in turmoil, proof that we're moving towards a new era. And so it must be the task of these new leaders to navigate their countries as well as the world through this period of global vulnerability. However, it isn't always smooth sailing, as Speaker 2 will now discuss.
We have identified 3 main issues resulting from succession, which new leaders are required to tackle to maintain prosperity and growth within their country. The first main issue is regional and global instability. This is an upset in the balance of power in a region, which in turn can have global implications. A number of factors can contribute towards regional and global instability, such as ethnic and tribal animosities, religious discord, and a lack of economic development. Consequently, the weakening in the relationship with borders can be seen, which in turn can cause worldwide conflict. Afghanistan, Iraq, and Israel are all prime examples of this. Secondly, rulers are faced with dealing with an ever-changing and shifting problem: corruption. Corruption, at the center of all its definitions, lies the idea that a corrupt act implies the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. Corruption is never the same and attaches itself to politics through complicated tax systems, numerous government systems with discretionary power, and a lack of transparent laws, which allow for corruption to flourish in our societies. Third world country people become corrupt due to their income not being able to support a comfortable way of life. In first world countries, this problem is also seen, but self-preservation and negligence towards our country is also a prevalent concern. Corruption is also linked to instability, as it can hinder the society by creating a rift between the state and its citizens. Change can be a catalyst for conflict. When new leadership enters with different ideologies, it can cause a clash between the principles and beliefs of societal groups and the state. Radicalism occurs because of the conclusion that drastic action is needed to be taken in order to voice concern in the face of indifference. Terrorism is the next level. Violence is reasoned as the solution because while change can be a catalyst for conflict, conflict can be a catalyst for change. Urgent action, however, must be taken. Since 2014, terrorism has risen by 330%.
There is a trend in South Africa whereby political succession marks a turning point. After the oppressive apartheid regime, we received the first democratic elections in 1994, where the ANC won by a 62% majority, resulting in Nelson Mandela becoming president. We had hopes of a changing system to alleviate poverty and to provide equality. In what was known as the first decade of freedom, there were simultaneous pursuits towards democratization and social economic change. These were consistent, proof being that in 1996, the first South African constitution was drawn up and it received global admiration. However, since the 1999 elections, whereby Thabo Mbeki succeeded Nelson Mandela, there has been a constant change in leadership, and our government has not been able to fulfill their goals, resulting in a decrease of standard of living, education, and welfare. And let's not forget the corruption that has rooted itself deep inside our government. December 2017 saw the presidential battle wrested from Jacob Zuma, the man accused of discrediting the ANC, and it was given to Cyril Ramaphosa. Once again, hope was felt by the people as their actions brought about change. It is now Cyril Ramaphosa's job to fulfill the principles of the ANC and to promote a democracy in which all people are granted freedom, dignity, and equality. Ramaphosa has a steep task ahead of him. To achieve his proclaimed goals, he has to uproot endemic corruption. And let's not forget the other challenges such as poverty and education. The downgrade of education has led to the immigration of top academics and a lack of faith in our tertiary institutions. The rise of poverty, on the other hand, has led to an escalating presence of crime, is causing disinterest and disinvestment, adversely affecting our tourism industry, which in South Africa is one of the main means of revenue.
Moving on to global case studies that we have chosen. On November 14th last year, Zimbabwe experienced a military coup. The man ruling the country at the time, 93-year-old Robert Mugabe, had during his 37 years as president gained the reputation of a ruthless tyrant. This is a man who plunged his country into economic and political turmoil. The move to seize privately owned farmland saw drastic food shortages and, coupled with hyperinflation, led to the collapse of the economy. Now, the coup itself was described by the media as a bloodless transition, a statement which amazingly held true, when the military simply stated that the president was safe and sound, albeit under house arrest, and that the goal instead was to target the criminals around him. Now, nevertheless, on the 21st of November, Robert Mugabe handed in his formal resignation. Fast forward to the present, and Deputy President Emerson Mnangagwa has taken over temporary presidency and says that he is committed to free and fair elections in the upcoming general elections in Zimbabwe, which we wish them all the luck for. The case studies which we have chosen are surprising, as seen in the unexpected success of Zimbabwe's military coup, and in the same way, I don't think anybody would have expected Donald J. Trump to become the 45th president of the United States of America. So let's look at America. Trump has made his motives clear in wanting to improve the lives of the American people. We can see that he has taken big steps in achieving this by improving aspects of the economy and exiting non-progressive global agreements. Trump has also been involved in many foreign negotiations, most notably being his meeting with North Korean President Kim Jong-un. Trump's presidency, though, hasn't been a smooth transition. Even over a year in, and there are a growing amount of Americans who are unhappy with Trump. They detest his qualities and policies, and despite his progressions, say that he is blatantly ignorant, be it with regard to his racist or misogynistic statements.
In order to maintain stability in the region, one must first isolate the main causes and their origin. In many cases, it is the task of neighboring or allied states to offer assistance in meeting the differences of the community. As seen earlier, transition between rulers highlights a time of vulnerability and foreign policies such as trade agreements, which are crucial to help maintain the stability instead of facing global repercussions. Additionally, we need to understand that instability of a country can be a result of the major issues of corruption and clashes of ideologies. When faced with the deep-rooted parasite of corruption, the principle must again be held that corruption is endemic to the fabric of politics. However, there are ways to reduce the spread. We can engage people with politics and government affairs, which allows them to elect leaders who they deem most capable, which in turn promotes transparency. Statistics show that a more educated population are more noticeable of corrupt activities. So while transparency between the government and its citizens is also important, having articulate, knowledgeable, empowered citizens should be a key driver. Finally, when dealing with conflicting ideologies, government powers need to turn away from the status quo. Currently, we are dealing with the results of terrorism. South Africa responds to terrorist attacks. However, we should instead be looking at, or for, the factors causing terrorist activity. We can also provide them with platforms in which to engage politically or to provide them with representatives. In South Africa, we have a public protector. The second approach try and alleviate hostility. The ruling party should educate their citizens on their beliefs and principles, as well as finding a middle ground between what the people desire and what the party finds to be in their best interests. Resolutions can only be found through negotiations with the other side. Again, there may not be a possible solution, but the fact that the state is willing to hear what their citizens think are progressive actions in changing the mindsets of people. The theme of this summit, Rekindling Our Dreams, explores the ideas of change and unity. Political succession truly encompasses these, as the entry of new leadership is surely a harbinger for change. Moreover, while we have fully conceded to the delicate process of transition and the countless examples of conflict that have arisen due to it, we feel that our solutions are a step forward in cultivating leadership interested in progressive ideas, those such as true unity being national, the type where state and citizen work together towards a brighter future, as well as global unity. The interest in fostering strong foreign ties across all borders. Overall, this leads to a rise in leadership, all united under the same goal. However, while we have explored many revenues of this topic from a South African perspective, there are many angles that this topic can be looked at and discussed from. So I would like to open up the discussion, as it would be very insightful for us to hear global opinions from a very diverse audience. Thank you for your time.
We will now be, thank you, South.
Thank you, South Africa, for your sharing. Does anyone have any questions for the South African delegation?
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation, it's really amazing. I'm just curious, for countries who themselves are corrupt, I'm curious how you ensure that they will implement the measures in order to stop corruption. For example, physical education, greater transparency. Because surely if the government was corrupt, they would try and find the best means possible to make sure people don't find out. So I'm just curious how you will ensure that these specific countries will adopt these measures.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. It's actually really good. So, for us, going through the government wouldn't really be a really good way to do it, because then they just shut you down. So, for our kind of thing is sort of starting low, right? So, the people who vote the government in are your working people. So, by educating those people, especially in South Africa, the majority of our population is uneducated and unemployed. We have a large unemployment rate. So, by educating these people about what is going on in the government, you can start to see a change of how they foresee your government. And does that answer your question? Yes.
Hi, I'm Dania from the US Education. I was wondering, so you said education is the key to creating transparency in government. So I was wondering, how do you educate the public about creating trust in the government? And so the relationship between people and state, who want to become together.
Okay, so that's a good question, thank you. So it's basically the idea that when we talk about if there's corruption in a country, for example in South Africa, it's very blatant corruption, meaning that there's already that rift that exists between the state and the public. So obviously by then if we can educate our public and we can provide them a platform, so again, even while South Africa is corrupt, we do have a public protector to speak for the people. If we can inform the people and educate them on what's happening in government, then we can allow them to elect more capable leaders. And then once we can get these capable leaders into power, then they can start to fix that rift and mend the discrepancy between society and state. Does that answer the question?
So, from what I understand, you're saying that we should educate people in a positive way, like this is what we should do, we shouldn't do it that way, they're looking out for the good things like that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Sorry, in the interest of time, we will cut short the question and answer here for today, but you can bring up your points later on during the breakout session. Thank you, South Africa.
Eliminating the obstacle on the borders and improving the connectivity of infrastructure. APYLS, which is Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, aims to encourage the economic integration as well as strengthen the relationship between Asian countries. Through the unlimited platform, China has improved her economic situation and plays an increasingly crucial role in the world trade. In this context, it's essential for every country to establish an economic order.
Now let's learn about China via data. By the data above, it can be seen that China has experienced rapid economic development since the reform and opening up policy. And her international influence and discourse rights also increased. More than 400 years ago, in the Qing dynasty, China implemented the seclusion policy. At that time, the Qing dynasty was self-sufficient and nearly independent to trade. So the overconfident Chinese rulers decided to close all the harbors except Guangzhou and live a seclusive life. It was not until Western powers invaded China through their forces and opium without mercy when Chinese realized that the development of the world was beyond imagination. But now we can see great changes have taken place in China. By 1979, China had implemented the reform and opened up policy. And in 2001, China joined the WTO. Today, China is advocating free trade in the international market and actively carrying out bilateral and multilateral trade for the reason of the benefit that can be brought around the world.
Okay, so structurally speaking, free trade, which is the spirit of globalization, enables countries to use comparative advantages to develop trade activities, so both sides can benefit from it. In an inquiry into the nature and courses of the wealth of nations, Ricardo, he also points out that is a price paid for merchandise less than the cost of produce at home and should never be produced at home. So, when countries focus on their comparative advantages, professional protection, and global free trade, resources will be more reasonably distributed, the production efficiency of the world will be improved, and the people around the world will live a better life.
Now guys, we're going to show you some cases in China and the globe. Firstly, in 2200 BC, the Emperor of Han commanded to build a road connected China with South Asia, West Asia, Europe, and Africa for trade, and it is called the Silk Road. It played such an important role in cultural communication and economic development in the ancient China. But unfortunately, it finally fell into disuse in Qing Dynasty about 400 years ago. So, in order to feed the need of people presently to live an affluent life and to increase the influences of our country, China has reviewed the Silk Road from 2013. We have some friendly cooperative policies to our neighboring countries, and by the policy One Belt, One Road, not only China but also the countries along the belt can benefit from it.
So not only the One Belt, One Road, China also set up Hainan Free Trade Zone to promote the globalization. The construct of the Hainan Free Trade Zone is divided into two steps. The first step is to establish a free trade zone, and the second step is to explore the establishment of free trade ports with Chinese characteristics. This free trade zone underlines China's commitment to expanding, open up, and promoting economic globalization.
So we are looking forward that this policy will inject new confidence to Hainan's development and promote globalization of trade.
Now, case studies in global. Nowadays, almost every country in the world are help building a new economic order. As the third largest economy, Japan makes great contributions to TPP, which is based on the rules that makes benefits to each country on the trade. Since Japan has ventured to take real continental, the countries which join TPP band strongly together, which making TPP more powerful in the world now.
And the openness and inclusiveness of economy will also promote the union of culture and politics, thus promoting the process of globalization. The EU is a good example. The establishment of the European communities in 1967 marked the elimination of trade barriers and the start of a new equal economic order in Europe. After nearly 3 decades of rapid economic development, the Europe achieved a political alliance, the European Union. Nowadays, EU plays an increasingly important role in the international community, and all of this begins with its process of economic openness and unity since the last century.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we must admit that free trade is not perfect, and economic globalization won't have no problems. First, economic globalization will exacerbate global economic fluctuations. So the economic globalization imposes strong connections between different countries. So when the economy of one country fluctuates, it will be transmitted to the different countries in relation to it as well. So if that country cannot effectively control and make adjustment, then it might lead to the global economic crisis. 2. Economic globalization will also lead to the imbalance of the world economy. Most of the economic rules existing today are conducive to the developed countries. However, as for the developing countries, they are actually often disadvantaged while trading, which making them especially difficult for them to switch their economic transformations. But ladies and gentlemen, though the disadvantages of globalization exist, it is not the reason for us to refrain from promoting globalization. From the geographical discovery to industrial revolution, from GATT to WTO, historical experiences are telling us that the trend of globalization is becoming inevitable.
Many problems appear after the start of globalization. However, we have some solutions to tackle the problems of fluctuations. One of these solutions is utilizing the monetary policy. Monetary policy is created through the action of central bank on the money supply and interest rates. It works either to provide a business-friendly economy to promote employment and growth, or a policy to reduce national spending in order to lower the inflation. So according to the graph, by implementing a well-organized policy, the interest rate will decrease as the quantity of money increases. So it will encourage investment and trade for all around the world and further lead to an overall growth in national GDP.
And the other policy we can use is called fiscal policy, which is changing level of taxation and spending to stabilize the economy. For example, the government imposes lower taxes, means more disposable income for the consumers and more cash for the businesses to invest in jobs. However, some people think that the fiscal policy and its own have limitations. So we suggest that the government can use both of the policy, depend on the situation. As you can see from the graph, the expansionary is when the aggregate demand increases to meet the new equilibrium with short-run aggregate supply. And the long-run aggregate supply will also increase, which lowering the unemployment rate and meeting the long-run equilibrium.
Finally, to quote from the China Institute of International Studies, among various diplomatic challenges, economic imbalance is one of the main difficulties China faces nowadays and afterwards. Karl Marx said that although trading makes everyone better off, there always will be one side that will experience unfairness and suffering loss. This can also be seen in the book, How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. In this case, the better taxes for in developing countries, I think, would be to meet the national value with the international value. The socially necessary labor type in China, I have to say, cannot meet the efficiency internationally standard. China needs to follow the rules. Therefore, improving labor efficiency and technology, I believe, will be vital towards offsetting the imbalance.
So thank you guys. We are now open to questions. Are there any questions?
You emphasize on free trade, so I wanted to ask whether, in light of the recent talks between US and China about a potential trade war, what do you believe, if they do come in impacts, what do you believe are the adverse effects on China and the adverse effects on US respectively?
Thank you for your question. And I want to say that personally, I lived in the States for 3 years, so we're all good to go. I hold no grudge against any country. And I have to say that in China, there's 1.3 billion people, and in other countries like India, there's lots of people as well. I believe that if a trade war comes, it is not beneficial for anybody, truly. Because from food to transportation to importing products, it is always causing the 1.3 billion people from top to bottom harm. So I want to say what China will do when it comes to having trade wars. So first of all, I want to say that China will open wide. China will open wide to every single country. If you want to have trade with China, China will welcome you with all products. Second of all, I want to say that China will be improving on technology products. For example, WeChat. WeChat is a compilation of Snapchat, Facebook, Apple Pay. Basically, when I go to buy groceries, I don't bring money because I want to have groceries. My mom always wants me to wash my hands, so I just bring my phone. And I can just use WeChat to pay for my groceries, which is incredibly convenient. When trade wars happens, we want to develop these technologies to present to the world to boost the Chinese economy to be more competitive. And we also want to make sure that we don't want to be in a new Cold War with any other country. Every country is fighting for its own benefit, we know that, but only through trade, like we said, can we create a new atmosphere that will be beneficial for everyone. Thank you.
Anyway, I think the trade war is actually not just limited to the interests of China and USA. It's actually it's for the globally. The economic globalization is also is how do I say? So it's influencing every country in the world, and it is influencing the GDP of the different countries. So it is, yeah. So what I want to say is that it is actually a globally scale. So what we're trying to do is try to make agreements with each other, and also China is trying to promote a peaceful atmosphere globally, and this is kind of our dreams. Peacefully, everybody are raising together. So we would like to make agreements, but also keeping each country's interests as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your question and for your answers to the delegates from China. In the interest of time, we will end the presentation by the delegation of China for now. Feel free to ask more questions during the breakout sessions later. Thank you once again to the delegation of China for your wonderful presentation. Next, may we invite the delegates from South Korea to present a meltdown beware the nuclear power play. The delegates from South Korea, please. Let us give a round of applause to the delegates from South Korea.
Good evening, fellow delegates and teacher chaperone. We are Google Academy. I'm Ayla Jong, Kim, and I am from South Korea. Before we start our presentation, could you all do me a favor? Just close your eyes and count numbers in your mind. Just make this room really silent, please. Were you guys scared? This is what nuclear bomb does, except it's much worse. It is like just Thanos' hand. It just destroys everything. However, unlike the nuclear weaponries, nuclear energy is very beneficial in many different fields these days. So we separated the two concepts, nuclear weaponry and nuclear energy. First is nuclear weaponry. There are 9 countries currently possessing nuclear weaponry: China, France, Italy, Israel, UK, Pakistan, India, USA, North Korea, and India. Some of the countries are just suspected because there are not any official document saying which countries are currently using nuclear weaponry. However, we could suspect it based on nuclear weaponry experiments that they are doing. The USA is the first countries who started to develop nuclear weapons, and it is the only country ever to use their weapons in combat during World War II to Nagasaki and Hiroshima in Japan. In 1968, most countries agreed to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, in which other countries were to not develop nuclear weapons. Most countries have agreed on the no-use first policy. However, many are concerned about North Korea because they are unpredictable and is susceptible to those global powers, obviously. To regulate sudden accident and the countries having nuclear, there are global regulations. The International Atomic Energy Agency, which is IAEA, has set nuclear safety standards in order to prevent countries from misusing nuclear power and regulate radiation from harming people. The safety standards currently contain general safety requirements and specific safety requirements about the facility. However, despite having the potential of being a threat to an entire community, there is no comprehensive ban on nuclear weapons in the international law, and it is too weak to regulate the nuclear weaponry diplomacy that really strong countries are doing.
Moving on to the issue of using nuclear power as an energy source. You guys might recognize this picture behind me. One is the Fukushima nuclear accident, and the other is the Chernobyl nuclear accident. The causes of these accidents were fairly simple. One was an unexpected tsunami, and the other was bomb versus mistake. However, the consequences were severe. The lives of several animals and people were gone in a snap. The whole environment around it was completely damaged and cannot be revived until today. So why might it be that people still use these nuclear energy despite the consequences that we all know? Well, we thought of some advantages that nuclear energy has. First, impact in saving the environment. A common energy source that we use today is fossil fuel. And fossil fuel provokes global warming. So what can we do to stop global warming? Well, we have a choice of reducing fossil fuel or replacing it. Using nuclear energy is replacing fossil fuel. Second, can aid in reaching sustainable development. This kind of relates to the first reason as it relates to fossil fuel. And we all know that fossil fuel will be gone in 50 years. So what else can we use after that? The answer is nuclear energy. Third, can provide jobs and stimulate the economy. This is a pretty obvious reason because using nuclear energy as an energy source will mean that there will be more investments relating to it, which means that there will be more jobs relating to nuclear energy. And finally, cheap cost. While installing the nuclear energy plant initially may be a bit costly, using it for a long term means that it's actually very cheap, which is why currently a lot of countries use it today. Next, major disadvantages of using nuclear energy as an energy source. First, we have the obvious. An accident could allow large amounts of nuclear waste floating around the environment, as we all know, still in Chernobyl and in Fukushima, Japan. Second, nuclear energy is a non-renewable energy source, meaning that, like fossil fuel, we cannot reuse nuclear energy. So once we finish using a nuclear energy plant, we cannot reuse it again. And finally, nuclear waste remains hazardous and radioactive for health.
We will explain about this further on about the possible solutions. However, with current technology, there is no way to completely eliminate the radioactivity that we have currently.
Okay, now we'll move on to specific case studies done in South Korea. So South Korea is relatively dependent on nuclear technology. It ranks 5th in capacity for generating nuclear energy and 9th for nuclear dependency. In order to manage the actual facilities, we have an institute called KARI, also Korea Atomic Energy Research Institute. In case of any leakage, the KARI officials have assigned a specific procedure to be followed. As soon as any abnormal readings in radioactivity have been detected, KARI will activate an EPZ, a region considered polluted. Then they will alert this to government officials, residents, and any medical care will also be provided. While the system after leakage is built, concerns about whether these measures are realistic still exist. This natural disaster messaging system is yet to be perfected, and the efficiency of this method is still very questionable. Another immediate threat is our neighbor to the north, North Korea. As we are still in ceasefire, military threats from the north are taken very seriously, especially because it is reported that North Korea has as many as 22 nuclear facilities in 18 locations. Although peace talks are on the go, such as the recent summit in Singapore, past missile and nuclear testings have caused an uneasy atmosphere. The country was initially part of NPT. However, it exited the treaty soon after the U.S. accused them of having illegal uranium. Now it is the only country to have violated the international laws related to nuclear weapons. Let's move on to the solutions. The short-term solution for nuclear waste would be to keep nuclear disposal deep underground, far from public access. A more sustainable yet not perfect long-term solution would be to build repositories to keep nuclear waste deeper underground, under a stable setting like granite, clay, and salt. This way, nuclear waste can stay unchanged for millions of years until the radioactivity level is safe. Next to nuclear weaponry. The most direct way to handle this would be to create a treaty eliminating all nuclear weapons. However, we all know that this is not practical. A more realistic solution would be to eliminate the quick launch nuclear weapon to prevent a case of an accidental nuclear weapon launch, and implement launch on warning and the no use first policy. Because nuclear weapons are usually only used in a case of war, effective discussions and negotiations between countries could also play a positive and active role in preventing damages of nuclear weaponry. I would like to finish off our presentation by restating why nuclear technology is so important. It can help us create a more resourceful, cleaner, safer world, a better world for us all. Thank you.
Thank you to the delegates of South Korea for our presentation. In the interest of time, we will take 2 questions from the floor. Can we have the first question, please? Okay, can we have the delegate from Japan?
Please tell me the difference between the short-term solution for the nuclear waste and long-term solution. I can understand the difference.
So for the short term and long term, they're actually very similar. It's basically just planting the nuclear waste deep underground, except for the long term, we would have a stable layer around it that would prevent nuclear radioactivity from seeping out to where people actually live.
For the next question,
Okay, sure. Do you have your question? Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry. I want you to give everyone a chance to ask. Yeah, can we have the delegate?
So I realize that you're concerned about the likelihood of the nuclear accident. So what is the energy that can cover it in Korea, especially friendly to the environment.
Could you repeat the question?
Once more.
Yes.
Right. So I realize that you're concerned about the likelihood of nuclear accident. So what is the energy that can cover it in Korea, which is the friendly to environment?
Do you mean an energy that can
Example.
replace? Except for nuclear energy.
Yeah, instead of nuclear power.
Well, there are several uses of energy. We can use fossil fuel again, but we know that it's going to last only 50 years, right? So we thought that using nuclear energy would be fine as long as we can prevent ourselves from such accidents. Because if you look at the Chernobyl nuclear accident, we know that it happened just because of a person, one person, that killed several lives. So we're finding a way that can prevent those accidents, a way that we can keep the nuclear energy safe, so that we can use it for long. Or did that not fully answer your question? Or could you clarify your question one more time if it's not?
Alright, I agree that, but yeah, there's a likelihood of the nuclear accident, and yeah, we didn't accept that the nuclear accident in Japan in 2011 tsunami. We didn't accept that accident. So yeah, I think that it's really difficult for keeping safe nuclear ones.
Of course it is very difficult to prevent ourselves from tsunamis because they are unexpected, right? But we know that there are detectable, tsunami detectable devices that we can use instead to find out if there's a tsunami nearby a nuclear power plant. So I think that's a way that we can prevent ourselves from having such accidents in the future.
Thank you for your question. Once again, we would like to thank the delegates from South Korea for the wonderful presentation.